All right, Advisory Committee. This is a rough draft of a bell schedule for 2018-19, and I'm hoping to get your input and also some ideas around how to get more staff input, student input, talk about some pros and cons, how to roll this out, sell it, get some buy-in, talk about implications, all sorts of good stuff. So I'm just going to talk through the basics, and then maybe we can set a meeting to go from there. So what we're looking at is a sample of a schedule. Obviously, not every student would have science first period, so this is just a sample. Something that we see the same from this year to next year, really a start time of 8:05 to 9 a.m. We're looking at Monday and Friday being designated teacher planning time, so no PD on those days. A couple minutes of announcements, that's it. Whereas Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, PD, we'll plan on those so that there's not a surprise or anything like that. We'll talk about more what those could look like in just a moment. So 9 o'clock start time has historically been true for our school. Let's not rock that boat. We'll keep 9 o'clock start time. We are looking at a 60-minute class instead of 65. So we're losing 5 minutes every day, but we can talk about how potentially we're making up that time and maybe more. So 60-minute from 9 to 10, 3-minute passing periods instead of two, every class period. If we want to set some standards around students not being in and out of the classroom in the first and last 10 minutes of class, we need to provide teachers and students some time to use the restroom, get some water, really send a couple text messages, and be ready to go. So 3-minute passing periods instead of two. We have an advisory class. It's between 40 and 45 minutes. Here it's 42. Everything is a little malleable. This draft has been looked at and approved by Liz. Her next step was for me to get some data and some input from you all and more staff and students. So we're taking that first step. So we have an advisory every day, but the structure might change throughout the week. You might see that one day we're focusing on students pulling their own attendance and grade data. This is happening in GES. They're using Schoology. We might have a day focused on community, specifically restorative approaches, restorative practices, circles, and different kinds of fun activity building things. Other days right now are marked as study hall days, where we would develop some structure to those, but they would be opportunities where students could work on things that need to happen for success in their academic classes. Historically, our before and after school study halls are not proving to be very effective for many students. So if we built it into the day, perhaps we could have some more buy-in. Also, if you're developing community and talking about grades with these students, this core group, perhaps they'd be less likely to ditch the next day whenever they have an opportunity to make a change, right? Or you just share a powerful story about your life the next day. They come in, they might be willing to work for you a little bit more. So having the same core group. This also allows for some really important planning where we don't have any contact time right now for GT students. There should be a course or some time to meet together, some ELL support, some special education IEP support could happen during this time. We could also be looking at BASE. It's a social emotional learning platform. We could do some work around that. There's Sarah Saniola had mentioned about ICAP requirements happening during this time, maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks. I've heard suggestions about passion projects and clubs. We can go, we don't have to do everything, but we have lots of opportunities to fill this time where we may not have success before and after school. So that time, we're looking at either second period or fifth period. We don't want it first. People would generally ditch. I've been in a school, worked with that. First period advisory, not very effective. Sixth period advisory, not very effective. Let's have it sometime in the middle of the day, not next to lunch. So we have advisory, another core class. We'll see math is not available first period. It is our lowest attended period of the day, and it's one of the highest impacting growth areas on our SPF, so let's not have it first period. Lunch, we're having one lunch in this particular plan. Liz is leaning towards 30 minutes. This is 36 minutes, including a passing period. we need to think logistically about how we can get all students served and get that done in an efficient time period. So it's not too long that people are getting into poor choices, right? But also not so short that people aren't getting what they need as far as food. After lunch, another 60, another 60, another 60. So 3 classes after lunch, and then 2 plus an advisory before lunch. So that's kind of the big thing here. We have 8:05 start time and a 3:30 finish time. So the day did get a little bit longer for students, but we're building in hopefully some academic success. Where this all started is I was kind of asking myself, what is our number one issue at Osage campus? What I've heard over and over would be attendance, thinking about what cures or solves attendance issues. 2 things. One, feeling performance, right, or feeling that success. So looking at that. The other is community or involvement or belonging. So that's why we're specifically looking at, let's look at people go from a 1.1 to a 1.2, right? Let's let them see that and be aware of what's happening with their grades, as well as let's provide specific time to get built into our school. This is kind of the overall plan of how it affects teachers, looking at common planning time. So if we had 3 math teachers, they would all have common planning during first period. So they could talk about assessments and data and where are you in your unit plan, what's going on, what's working, what's not working, talk about vertical alignment, all sorts of good things. Common planning for each of the subject areas, right? So social studies, English, all the way along. You'll notice electives not available 6th period, possibly an idea, right? And I don't know what our attendance, how that affects our attendance, but I'm wondering if people may not take an elective as necessary and leave early if the day got a little bit longer. Special ed, ELD pushing in just like they always have. So looking at advisory being a big deal, Liz is in for advisory. I've heard that Clark is in for advisory. Our other campus, GES, is definitely doing advisory now. They're going to be implementing BASE, that social emotional learning, to support some of that. Alyssa has done a ton of work in advisory. We're looking at 6 periods with 5 at 60 minutes, 1 at 42. Our advisory is currently that 42-minute period. 3-minute passings, 1 lunch, common planning, looking at morning PD. PD for this Thursday might support what's going to happen that advisory period, right? So if we're doing circles, we teach circles. If we're going to be looking at how to pull grades and attendance for students via Schoology, that's what you'll be doing that day with students. So our PD in the beginning could be aligned with what you're doing with students until everyone's off the ground. Wednesdays might be more like committees, PLC, maybe some data time. So this is some opportunity. Also heard some recommendation on intermittently, right? Every other week, maybe having an activity schedule or half-day schedule where we allow some time in the end of the day for PLC, PD, common work time, staff morale time, service learning development, all sorts of things that could happen if we start thinking about building in an activity schedule every 2 weeks throughout the calendar year. One thing I didn't mention about this advisory, we could also fit in all sorts of testing opportunities. So access testing, map testing, a lot of that could happen in these advisories because everyone in the building would be on advisory at the same time. So everyone is doing it. There's nowhere cooler to be. Let's just get it done. I think we can move through our testing process a lot faster than our current processes. This is an overview. Let's see what we can do to set up a meeting, talk about some shortcomings of this, some pros of this. How do we roll it out to staff? Get staff input, get student input, go from there.